Car dealership manager kicks out Sylvester Stallone. What happened next will leave you speechless. Sylvester Stallone, the legendary actor, had never really enjoyed the constant attention that came with his fame. Over the years, he had become one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood, but his journey had never been easy. From humble beginnings, struggling to make ends meet, Stallone had fought his way into the hearts of millions with iconic roles like Rocky Balboa and John Rambo. But despite the fame and fortune, he'd never let it change who he was. At 75 years old, Stallone had seen it all, the highs and the lows of being in the spotlight. And now, even though he had earned his place in history, he still valued privacy, authenticity, and humility above all else. Stallone didn't need the spotlight to prove his worth. He had done that decades ago with his performances, his drive, and his passion. He was a living legend, yes, but he preferred to walk the streets without drawing too much attention. On this particular afternoon, Stallone found himself in Beverly Hills, a place he had visited countless times but had always done his best to avoid the crowds. Today was different. He wasn't here for a film shoot or a press conference. He was simply looking for a new car, one that would fit his lifestyle but also offer him some peace and solitude. Stallone had his eye on a luxury car dealership that specialized in high-end vehicles. It wasn't one of those flashy, crowded places. It was known for providing exclusive, personalized service, exactly what he was looking for. Stallone didn't want to deal with pushy salespeople or a frenzy of people gawking at him. He wanted to walk into the dealership, look around, and perhaps even drive off with the perfect car, all without drawing attention to himself. He parked his black SUV in front of the dealership and slipped out of the vehicle. With his dark sunglasses on, a gray hoodie, and black jeans, he blended in like any other man on the street. No entourage. No cameras. Just Sylvester Stallone, a man, just like anyone else, looking for a car. As Stallone made his way toward the entrance of the dealership, he couldn't help but notice the high-end vehicles lined up in the showroom. Lamborghinis, Porsches, and Ferraris gleamed under the showroom lights, their polished bodies reflecting the soft glow of the room. The cars were impressive, but it wasn't the vehicles that caught his attention. It was the feeling that surrounded the place, a sense of exclusivity, sophistication, and peace. This was exactly what he needed. As he stepped inside, he was greeted by the soft chime of the doorbell and the cool air that swept through the room. The showroom was quiet, with only a few customers milling around. The luxurious yet relaxed atmosphere was just what Stallone had hoped for. He could already imagine himself behind the wheel of one of these fine machines. However, what he didn't expect was the reaction he would get from the car dealership manager, Todd Harrison. Todd was in his early 40s, well-groomed, and wearing a sharp-tailored suit that matched the refined atmosphere of the dealership. He was the manager of the business, known for his attention to detail and professionalism. Todd's philosophy when it came to sales was simple: treat every customer like they were the most important person in the room, no matter who they were. The idea that status or fame should affect the service someone received wasn't something Todd believed in. To him, every customer was just another person, and he was there to help them find exactly what they needed. Todd was busy, managing his team and overseeing some transactions when he noticed a man walk into the dealership. At first glance, Todd didn't recognize him. The man was dressed casually, a hoodie and jeans, not the typical attire for a high-end car buyer. As the man walked further into the showroom, Todd glanced up and gave him a cursory look, before returning his attention to a customer at the desk. What Todd didn't realize was that the man in the gray hoodie was none other than Sylvester Stallone, one of the most iconic actors of all time. Stallone made his way through the showroom, glancing at the cars, taking his time to admire the sleek designs and the precision engineering of each vehicle. He wasn't in a rush. He simply wanted to enjoy the experience. But as he looked at the luxury cars, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't truly blending in. Something about the way people glanced his way seemed off. As he continued to peruse the vehicles, Todd Harrison noticed the man walking slowly through the showroom. He noticed the calm demeanor, the mature presence, and the way the man looked at the cars, not like a typical wealthy customer but as someone with a genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship. Still, Todd didn't think much of it. Then, with a sudden burst of energy, Todd approached the man, ready to offer assistance. But as he drew closer, he saw something in the man's face that triggered something in him. Something familiar. "Excuse me, sir," Todd began, approaching with a welcoming smile. Can I help you with something today? The man turned to face Todd, and their eyes met. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of recognition, but Todd's mind couldn't quite place it. He had seen so many customers pass through these doors, and he didn't have the time to stop and dwell on it. "I'm just looking around," the man replied with a gravely relaxed voice. It wasn't anything special, but the tone was something that stuck with Todd. "I'm sorry, but we're currently focusing on customers who are actually interested in purchasing vehicles today," Todd said bluntly. He had no idea who this man was, but he didn't have time to entertain any casual lookers. His sales team was busy, and he didn't want any distractions. The man's face remained calm, his eyes steady. "I understand, but I'm genuinely interested. I'm just not in a hurry." Todd, still not fully recognizing the man, frowned. "I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave if you're not planning on making a purchase." The words hung in the air. The man looked at Todd, and there was a brief silence before he nodded, as though resigned. Without saying another word, he turned and began walking out of the dealership. Todd watched him leave, his eyes narrowing slightly, still not fully understanding why the encounter had bothered him. It wasn't until later, when he glanced at the television screen in the back office and saw a news report about a car dealer being involved with Sylvester Stallone, that he realized his mistake. "Wait a minute," Todd muttered to himself. He quickly grabbed his phone and searched up Sylvester Stallone at Beverly Hills car dealership. The pictures confirmed what he had initially thought. The man he had just kicked out was none other than the Hollywood legend himself, Sylvester Stallone. Todd's heart sank. He had just made one of the biggest mistakes of his career. The actor who had entertained millions for decades was standing in his dealership, and he had treated him like just another customer. Todd immediately called his team, apologizing profusely and explaining his actions. He knew that this incident would be talked about for a long time. His chance to have a meaningful connection with someone as influential as Stallone had slipped away, all because of his quick judgment and failure to see beyond the surface. Todd Harrison sat in his office, staring at the television screen, his mind racing. The earlier conversation replayed in his head over and over again. The man in the gray hoodie. The calmness. The voice. The undeniable sense of quiet power that Todd had dismissed so easily. It wasn't until he saw the breaking news report that it hit him like a wave. Sylvester Stallone. The legendary actor. The man he had just asked to leave was the same man whose films had inspired millions and whose name was synonymous with resilience, strength, and success. "How could I have been so stupid?" Todd muttered to himself, pacing the room. He had been so caught up in the mundane business of sales, so focused on making sure that only the right kind of customer was given attention, that he had forgotten to see the person behind the persona. For all his experience in managing the dealership, Todd had failed in the most fundamental way. He hadn't recognized who was standing right in front of him. He had judged the man by his appearance and assumed he was just another casual passerby with no real interest. And in doing so, he had treated Sylvester Stallone, one of the most famous faces in Hollywood, like just another ordinary customer. Todd's stomach churned with the weight of his mistake. The news report played over and over again, showing pictures of Stallone smiling in front of expensive cars, images from the dealership, with an equally stunned look on his face. It was all happening so quickly, and Todd had no idea how to fix it. His phone rang. He glanced at the screen. It was the owner of the dealership. He took a deep breath before answering. "Todd, I just saw the news." "What happened?" The owner's voice was stern. Todd swallowed hard, his throat dry. I made a mistake. I kicked out Sylvester Stallone. I didn't recognize him. I told him to leave because he wasn't ready to make a purchase. And now he's on the news. They're calling it a huge blunder." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "You did what?" the owner finally said, his voice barely contained. I know it sounds insane," Todd replied, running his hands through his hair. "I'm going to try to make it right. I don't know what else to do." It was clear to Todd that the only way to make amends was to reach out to Stallone personally. He couldn't just wait around for the situation to fix itself. It would take more than an apology to repair the damage he had done. He had to act. Todd grabbed his phone and scrolled through Stallone's social media profiles. He knew it wouldn't be easy to get through to him, but he had to try. He tapped the screen and sent a direct message, an apology, short but sincere. I'm deeply sorry for my actions today. I didn't recognize you, but I understand now who you are. Please allow me the chance to make it right. I respect you and would love to help you find the car of your dreams. My sincerest apologies." After hitting send, Todd sat there, waiting. The silence was deafening. It felt like an eternity before his phone buzzed again. It was a message from Sylvester Stallone. Todd's heart skipped a beat as he opened the text. "No hard feelings. It was a misunderstanding. I appreciate your apology. Let's talk." Relief washed over Todd, but he knew this was just the beginning. Apologies were one thing, but actions were what really mattered. Todd knew he had to go above and beyond to make things right, to show Stallone that he was more than just a mistake, a man who understood the importance of humility and integrity. The next day, Todd arrived at the dealership early, anxiously preparing for the meeting. Stallone had agreed to come back, but Todd knew he had to make a great impression. He had already arranged for a special, private viewing of some of the dealership's rarest luxury cars, an experience that would be tailored to Stallone's preferences. As the clock ticked by, Todd's nerves grew. This was his chance to prove he wasn't just another salesman, but someone who could acknowledge a mistake and make things right. At precisely 11 a.m., the door to the dealership opened, and in walked Sylvester Stallone, this time without his hoodie, wearing a casual leather jacket, a plain t-shirt, and dark jeans. He looked exactly like the man Todd had seen on the big screen, grizzled, confident, and yet somehow still approachable. Todd rushed to greet him, his heart pounding in his chest. "Mr. Stallone, I can't tell you how sorry I am about what happened," Todd said, extending his hand. "Thank you for giving me the chance to make things right." Stallone shook his hand with a firm but friendly grip. "It's no problem, Todd. I've been in the industry long enough to know that these things happen. I'm not upset. I just wanted to make sure you knew I'm serious about looking for a new car." Todd was taken aback by the ease in Stallone's voice. There was no bitterness, no anger, just understanding. Stallone wasn't one to hold grudges. He was a man who appreciated sincerity and effort. "I've set up a few cars for you to look at," Todd said, gesturing toward a row of luxury vehicles. "Please, take your time and let me know what you think. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask." Stallone smiled, walking toward the cars, his eyes scanning each one with the same intensity he brought to his roles on screen. It was evident that he wasn't just picking a car. He was looking for something that would reflect his personality, something that was both stylish and timeless, just like him. For the next hour, Todd watched Stallone examine the vehicles, asking thoughtful questions, taking his time. Todd was impressed. This wasn't about a quick sale. It was about finding the perfect match for someone who appreciated quality and craftsmanship. Finally, after carefully inspecting the cars, Stallone turned to Todd with a smile. "I've made my decision," he said, his voice warm and calm. "I'll take the Ferrari. It's exactly what I was looking for." Todd couldn't believe it. He had not only won back the respect of Sylvester Stallone, but had also helped him find the car he had been searching for. As Stallone completed the paperwork, he turned to Todd, looking him in the eye. "You've done a great job, Todd. I respect how you handled the situation. Mistakes happen, but it's how you make them right that defines you." Todd smiled, feeling a sense of pride he hadn't experienced in a long time. "Thank you, Mr. Stallone. Your understanding means a lot to me." As Stallone drove off in his new Ferrari, Todd stood there, watching the car disappear down the street. The mistake he had made had turned into an opportunity to grow, to prove that integrity and humility still mattered. And in the end, it was more than just a sale. It was a lesson in respect, humility, and understanding. As the days passed after Stallone's return to the dealership, Todd couldn't help but reflect on the events that had unfolded. The whole situation, the initial embarrassment, and the redemption had left a lasting impact on him. He had learned something valuable. Humility and respect could open doors that even the highest levels of status couldn't. Word of Sylvester Stallone's visit to the dealership spread quickly, both in the dealership's office and beyond. Todd had, in a way, been given a second chance to prove himself, not just to Stallone, but to the people around him. His boss, the dealership owner, had been pleased with how Todd handled the situation, and his colleagues admired how Todd managed to turn a mistake into a positive experience. The dealership had even been able to capitalize on the publicity of Stallone's visit. The Ferrari Stallone had purchased became one of the dealership's featured cars, and people from all over the city flocked to the showroom to see it. Stallone's purchase had not only brought business, but it had also changed the atmosphere at the dealership. Todd's approach had shifted since that day. The encounter with Stallone had shown him that, while status and fame were often front and center in people's minds, it was ultimately the personal connections and genuine actions that truly made an impact. One afternoon, a week later, as Todd was working at his desk, he received another unexpected message. This time, it wasn't through social media. It was a call from Sylvester Stallone's assistant. Todd answered the phone, his heart beating faster. He wasn't sure what to expect, but the conversation that followed would make all the difference. "Hi, is this Todd Harrison?" the assistant asked. "Yes, this is Todd," he replied, his voice a bit more steady than he felt. "This is Karen, Sylvester's assistant. Mr. Stallone wanted to thank you personally again for how you handled everything at the dealership. He's truly impressed with your professionalism and, most importantly, your humility. He'd like to invite you to a private screening of his new film next week, as a gesture of appreciation for how you handled things." Todd was stunned. He had done his best to make things right, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. Sylvester Stallone, the same man he had kicked out of his dealership just days ago, was now extending an invitation to a private event. Todd had heard about private screenings, of course, but never imagined he would be invited to one. "I don't know what to say," Todd stammered. "I'm honored, really. Thank you so much. It's the least Mr. Stallone could do. He's looking forward to meeting you again. He appreciates your genuine effort to make things right." As the call ended, Todd sat back in his chair, feeling a wave of gratitude and disbelief wash over him. He had been given a chance not just to redeem himself, but to forge a meaningful connection with someone he had once only admired from a distance. It wasn't just about a fancy screening or an opportunity to rub elbows with a celebrity. It was about the message that genuine effort and integrity could go a long way, no matter how famous or important someone was. The night of the screening arrived, and Todd found himself walking into a theater in Hollywood, where a small group of people were gathered for a private viewing of Sylvester Stallone's latest film. He could hardly believe it as he walked through the plush lobby, looking around at the familiar faces, some actors, directors, and filmmakers. But there, sitting in the front row, was Sylvester Stallone, smiling warmly as Todd approached. The moment was surreal. Stallone stood up and shook his hand. "Todd, it's good to see you again," Stallone said, his voice still as calming and kind as Todd remembered. "Thank you for inviting me," Todd replied, trying to hide the nervous excitement in his voice. Stallone smiled. "It's the least I could do. You've got a lot of heart, Todd. And that's something I respect. Life's about more than just sales and business. It's about doing the right thing, even when no one's looking." Todd nodded, deeply moved by Stallone's words. He felt like he was hearing the wisdom of a man who had been through it all, who had learned valuable lessons throughout his own life. As the screening began, Todd settled into his seat beside Stallone, watching the film unfold. For the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace. He wasn't just an employee anymore, but someone who had earned respect, not because of his position or status, but because of his willingness to acknowledge mistakes and make things right. That night, Todd left the screening with a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just a car dealership manager anymore. He was someone who had learned the true meaning of integrity, humility, and the importance of treating others with respect, no matter who they were. Stallone's invitation had changed everything for Todd, not just professionally, but personally. He now saw the world and his role in it differently. Action spoke louder than words, and it was through those actions that true connections were made, ones that lasted beyond the surface, beyond the business, and into the heart.